Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Back to another edition of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. You know, this is episode 144, and I just got to say, I'm surprised every time a new episode comes out. But you know what? It's all because of you, the fans, the players. I don't know. Maybe you guys are gluttons for punishment. I don't know. But I absolutely appreciate you continuing to tune in and listen to some of the best true crime content you're going to get anywhere, right? This is the real Game of Crimes. Now, you regular listeners already know, but we don't have many secrets here on Game of Crimes. Well, you know, we don't talk about classified things, but everything else pretty much open for discussion, right? Well, yesterday I received some news that I'm pretty excited about. For those of you who've been listening to the show for a while, you might recall that my former partner, Morgan, who, by the way, now has taken over the glorious title of traitorous bastard because he left Game of Crimes. If you remember, he loved pinning that title on me after Connie and I moved to Orlando from Northern Virginia. So there, Morgan. Ha. Anyway, you may remember Morgan and I talking about a TV project I was involved with down in Miami. Well, it's just announced the show, which will be called The Real CSI Miami. It's going to be aired on CBS starting on June 26th. That's part of that CSI franchise. And I got to participate in a couple of the episodes. I can't tell you more about it right now due to non-disclosure agreements, but as soon as I can, I will. I hope this doesn't sound too self-serving because, when I told Connie about it yesterday, she said, you know what? That's great, Mr. Hollywood. Now take the trash out and sweep the front sidewalk. I married a tough girl, didn't I? You get no respect. That's what Rodney Dangerfield says. Okay, anyway, back to the show. Some quick housekeeping here. The goal of Game of Crimes is to bring you stories of real-life heroes, right? That's what you always come here for. We want to promote law enforcement, military veterans, and our first responders in the most positive light. That way you hear them tell their stories. It's not where Murph reads something and I try to tell you what they did. You get to hear their acts of unbelievable bravery from those who actually lived through those events. And of course, we also occasionally bring on a former bad guy so you can hear those stories from their perspective. And I plan to continue doing that. So to do all this, I'd appreciate you taking the time and head over to Apple or Spotify and hit those 5 stars. Now, I've said I don't know how it works, but I do know that it helps with the ratings, which helps to grow the listenership of the show. So if you would, please just take a minute, click on those 5 stars after you finish your episode. It doesn't take long. It only takes a few seconds. And I do appreciate your continued support. Send your comments and feedback to me. I've got some comments about my editing along with a couple of suggestions after last week's posts. I'm serious when I say that. I really do want to hear your thoughts and ideas, so keep them coming, and I will do my best to implement them as much as I can. If you don't like what I'm putting out here, it doesn't benefit either one of us, right? So I'm here for you. Okay, also go check out our website at gameofcrimespodcast.com. That's gameofcrimespodcast.com. That's where we've got all the episodes listed, the book list. And you know what? If you click on the episodes on the site there, if we have additional photographs of our guests, you'll see those there as well. And then there's some other some other really important stuff on there. On social media, on Facebook and Instagram, you can go to Game of Crimes Podcast. And on X, formerly known as Twitter, you can go to Game of Crimes. I'm trying to put some more posts on there. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a real big social media fan, so it's a little bit of a burden for me. No, it's a big burden for me to do that, but I'm going to try and do better. While you're on Facebook, go to Game of Crimes Fan Club and take a look at that group and join the group. It's run by our favorite mafia queen, Sandy Salvato. Now, she's the lady that rules with the iron fist, but you know what? She wears a velvet glove, so it doesn't hurt too bad. But let me warn you, whatever you do, don't ever tick off the queen. But if you go over there, you're going to join several hundred other members. These are some of the most fun living people I've ever seen. You know what? I always come away from that site laughing. So check it out, see what you think about it. Now, as a heads up, I still have the Patreon channel on hold, but fully plan to bring it back soon. And you know what? That's where you'll hear even more content. To go there, that's patreon.com/gameofcrimes. All right, a quick disclaimer. This is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. And I do take these stories seriously. But we also want to have some fun. And I rarely take myself seriously. I'm an idiot and I know it. Now, I got another surprise for you. I'm happy to report that in keeping in line for not taking things too seriously, I've brought back one of my favorite sections, and that's Small town police blotter. Woo! Sorry, I don't have the music like Morgan had, but it might be coming soon. You know what? This is a section dedicated to stupid criminal stories. And believe me, when I found out, there's no shortage to these stories. So the first one we have up today is titled, Man Nabbed for Fried Chicken Battery on His Sister. Okay, a 20-year-old man is behind bars charged with launching a fried chicken fuselage at his sister during a domestic clash in the Florida residence they share. According to investigators, the poultry pelting occurred in the Clearwater home of Kanye Medley and his sibling. Clearwater, man, we have a lot of stories on here in Small Town Police Blotter from the Clearwater and Tampa area, don't we? Anyway, during a verbal altercation, Medley grabbed a bag of Church's fried chicken from his sister and began throwing pieces of chicken at her. One of the pieces of chicken hit the victim in the back and left debris of food on her shoulders. I mean, holy cow, that's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible they wasted the chicken. After being read his rights, Medley reportedly admitted throwing 2 pieces of chicken, one of which hit her. The motive for the chicken winging? Medley stated that it was because he hadn't eaten and he didn't want the piece of chicken that his sister was offering, and it ticked him off. It upset him. Despite that hangry defense, Medley was arrested for domestic battery, a misdemeanor, and booked into the county jail. Now, Mr. Medley weighs 230 pounds, just so you know, so he might have done well to avoid the chicken for a while. But he was arrested early this year for allegedly biting and strangling his sister, the same girl, and slamming a door on her arm and striking her with a piece of wooden decor. Oh, what a piece of crap, right? The state attorney subsequently declined to pursue felony and misdemeanor counts after Medley's sister declared that she did not wish to see her brother prosecuted. Well, then why did you call the cops to start with? Come on. I mean, after all these events, wouldn't it be smart for maybe her to kick him out or maybe find a different place to live? As I said earlier, gluttons for punishment. Hey, maybe they'll become fans of Game of Crimes here. Okay. Our next story. The cops say she stole a car for a stripper interview, and she was hoping for immunity. So this is Kasia Shelton reportedly thought her arrest was a joke as the vehicle was recovered. An Indiana woman seemed to think she did nothing wrong despite stealing a car in order to travel to an interview for a long sought after job to be a stripper. This is what the cops are saying. Confronted by police, Shelton, who was 20 years old, acted like this whole thing was a joke, and she didn't understand what she was going to be arrested for, according to the Muncie, Indiana Police Department. So police received a call about the theft of a 2013 Kia Optima from a Muncie dealership on Monday. Let's see, 2013, this is 2014, so the car's got a little mileage on it. An employee claimed they were preparing to arrange for Shelton to take a test drive, but were distracted as the dealership kept getting phone calls, though no one seemed to be on the other end of the phone. The employee reportedly told Sheldon to wait while they went to answer yet another phone call. So I'm going to guess this dealership has one employee. I don't think we're dealing with a Kia dealership, a regular dealership or something like that. Anyway, that's when Sheldon allegedly drove off in the Kia. Cameras showed the vehicle easily traced to Sheldon, who'd filled out a form on the dealer's website, traveling south toward Indianapolis and later returning to Muncie, according to the cops. When officers showed up at Sheldon's home, the woman initially lied about who she was. You think? She later admitted to stealing the car and driving some 60 miles to Indianapolis to interview for a job as an exotic dancer, but claimed it wasn't a big deal because she returned the vehicle to the dealership afterwards. Well, the documents indicate Sheldon actually left the vehicle with the keys inside in a parking lot next door to the RDI Motors dealership. However, an RDI Motors employee said the vehicle was ultimately recovered in Anderson, Indiana, about 20 miles away from Muncie. Sheldon reportedly told police she didn't know what happened to the vehicle after she left it, but that she'd seen it on some bitch's Snapchat. Okay, is Snapchat still the thing? I don't know. She was arrested on felony charges of auto theft and identity deception, and she faces up to 2.5 years in prison if convicted. Police had not said who they believe was placing the phone calls to the dealership. Well, maybe while she's in prison, she can practice her pole dancing. I'm sure she'd be very highly sought after in that environment, right? Oh my gosh, what are people thinking? Okay, and the third one, jail for man. I saved this for last. Jail for man in pink dildo domestic attack. Okay, here we go. May 6th of this year, so this just happened. An ex-con has been convicted of attacking his girlfriend with, of all things, a pink dildo after she derided him as a limp, you fill in the blank there, who is in need of Viagra. This winner's name is Steve Nurdin. He's 38 years old. He pleaded no contest to domestic battery stemming from the violent confrontation earlier this year. And the Florida resident, once again, we're in Florida, that he shared with his 37-year-old victim. Now, this guy was adjudicated guilty by a county court judge, sentenced to 8 months in jail. He was also fined $920, and he was ordered to have no contact with the victim. Following his January 1st arrest, this jerk was freed from custody after posting a $2,500 bond. He was rearrested a month later for violating terms of his pretrial release by repeatedly contacting the victim via text messages, Facebook, Snapchat, and TikTok. So I guess Snapchat is still a thing out there. Okay. Nurdin pleaded no guilty to the violation charge, for which he's been behind bars the last 3 months. He was fined about $1,000. His jail sentence will run concurrently with the misdemeanor battery case's punishment. Now, according to the police report, the victim told the cops she was arguing with Nurdin, well, maybe he is a nerd, Nurdin, about their relationship when she declared that he needed an erectile dysfunction medication to address his sexual shortcomings. And you can just go anywhere with that, but I'm not going to. The guy said it became irate, and he retrieved the sex toy from a bedroom shelf and shoved this thing right into her mouth. He also punched her in the eye. When questioned by cops, he claimed not to recall welding the dildo. Of course not, because that pink thing just jumped in his hands. Well, I guess that's better than something else jumping in his hands. But moving on, identified as a career criminal by police, this guy was released from state prison in mid-2023 after serving more than 13 years for armed robbery, aggravated assault, and felonious possession of firearms. Hey, girlfriend, get you a new boyfriend. This guy was a loser back then, and he's still a loser now. You can do better. Unbelievable. Isn't it amazing what people subject themselves to? And then they look to others like, oh, it's okay. I mean, that's part of my life. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed Small Town Police Blotters. Let me know what you think about it. If you don't like it, well, I'm probably going to continue to do it because I do. I think it's funny. It's it's just ridiculous what people will do to other people. Okay, now let's get back to today's episode. Our guest today is a young lady who I met in February this year at the Core Medical Group Annual Military Appreciation Weekend up in Beaufort, South Carolina. You've heard me talk about that before, and you'll probably hear me continue to talk about it because there's some more people I met up there that I want to bring on the show here. But today's guest, her name is Jenna Griffith. I don't want to spend a lot of time telling you what you're going to hear from her, but you know what? This lady has found a passion to help others. People that I refer to as unsung heroes. These are people that, are first responders, our military veterans. They kind of take the stage, they get in the limelight with the things that they do, but our families are left to just take care of business and never getting recognition about it. And it ends up with issues, right? So Jenna has created a niche, I'll say, in which she's gone through a lot of this herself. And so she's helping these people with the challenges that they're facing. She's working with them to help them maintain and or regain their identities and their purpose in life, which I think is heroic in itself. And just so you know, I also met Jenna's husband at the same event. And as a little teaser here, he'll be a guest on Game of Crimes, hopefully the next week's show, because we've never had a husband-wife back-to-back show. And his story is as exciting as Jenna's here. So, in my opinion, both of these people were heroes in their own right. So now, if you're ready, you know what you need to do. You need to get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. This is the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, the game of crimes. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Today is a special day for me. You know, I said this with my last guest. It'll probably be the common thing I say because I'm not bringing anybody on here that I don't like. But today's guest is Miss Jenna Griffith. Now, I only met Jenna a couple months ago with her husband. We were in Beaufort, South Carolina. This was late February this year, 2024. We were all attending the Corps Medical Group 3rd Annual Military Appreciation Weekend with Sid Gordon and Mel Chancey. If you know anything about Mel, he's we're going to get him on here eventually, but he's the former president of Hells Angels in Chicago. He is a big boy. He used to be one real badass, and he's now a Christian, which I appreciate. I really appreciate you, Mel. So thank goodness the man upstairs forgives. So while I was there, I got there and I really didn't know anybody. And this was a 3-day event, and I was one of the keynotes, and there was a lot of speakers. And the very first speaker got up with this young blonde, very cute. I thought, wow, what's she going to talk about? And she got up, and this is Jenna, and I'm listening to her. She's very soft-spoken, and what she's talking about is something that's always been near and dear to my heart that I think we ignore way too much. You know, we our military veterans, our first responders, all these studs and heroes that are out there, whether they're men or women, you know, they kind of take center stage. And what happens to their families? You know, what I refer to as the unsung heroes. So that's one of the things that Jenna realized there was a need for because of her experiences, which she's going to tell us about later today. And when I got up to do my little speech a couple days later, you know, I try to always touch on, if it's these type of groups, I always try to touch on the unsung heroes. And you know, a lot of times I'll even ask them to stand up because the heroes always get all the recognition, but the real heroes are back home trying to take care of business, taking care of life, got to take care of the kids, you got to take care of the bills. When problems come up, when the plumbing goes bad, when the electricity doesn't work, the AC goes out or the heat goes out, all that, these unsung heroes are expected to just step up and do it. And there's no reward from it. It's just part of it. While the heroes are out doing the crazy things that we like to do. So I hope I haven't gone on too long about that. But the reason I am going on about it is that's why I wanted to bring Jenna on. Everything she said up there, I agreed to. I referred to her when I got up and did my little speech because I appreciate what she was doing. So having said all that, welcome, Miss Jenna Griffith. Can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. You're so right. The spouses don't get a lot of recognition, and I'm glad that Sid invited me to be a part of that weekend and really share why it's such an important thing to acknowledge.
It was, and it was. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what to expect. I met Sid in San Diego last year through Lou Velozzi, who's a retired ATF agent. He was one of our first guests here on Game of Crimes. And Sid was very welcoming. I met his brother-in-law, John Bernthal, the actor, who was just one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. At some point, I hope to get him on here just because of who he is and his success in Hollywood. You know, he typically plays a bad guy. When he plays a bad guy, he does a hell of a job. I mean, he does a great job at it. So the fact that then I meet you guys, as well as some other people there, and everybody was just so welcoming. You know, I'm in awe. You know, Lou was a cop. I was a cop. We had the cop from Pittsburgh who we've had on the show since then. And boy, I hate it when I can't remember somebody's name. It is Tim Matson, who was a Pittsburgh cop that was shot in the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, survived, but went through horrible things afterwards from his own agency who left him hanging. But that's a whole different episode. But that's what I love about all these people. And I'm looking at these people and, you know, I've never seen that many service dogs in one place in my life. I mean, they were everywhere. And that shows you right there, you know, what these guys have been through. That's a good indicator of what they've been through. But everybody I met, I mean, Mel Chancey, I've followed him on Instagram for a couple of years. As soon as I met him, I get a big bear hug from him. I'm like, you know, I never thought I would be.
Genuine guy.
He really is. I never thought I'd do a hug with a Hell's Angels. That was a little bit of an eye opener. So, well, let's get around to what's going on with you here, young lady. Just very quickly. Well, you didn't have to be quick. You just take your time. Kind of walk us through your life, where you grew up, what your family dynamics were, the schools, your career. Just give us a brief look at the background, how Jenna came to be.
She became to be. That's an interesting story, and it'll take me about 5 years to share it.
Okay, we got time.
I'm just kidding. Grew up in the Nashville area, Southern Christian family, and I would say that I had a very blessed childhood. My parents were together up until I was 23, so I had the consistency of both parents growing up, and we lived very well. And I am the middle of three. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm the middle child, and I am telling you that I am stereotypical middle child. So all of the gray hair that my parents ever got was from me because I was the rebel who always needed attention and never wanted to do things a way that we were quote unquote supposed to do it, which makes a lot of sense when you see what I do in my life now. And I decided at 18, I was leaving my super strict family to rebel and move down to Atlanta with some friends of mine. And about 3 months after that, I ended up pregnant. Spoiler alert, sex leads to pregnancy. So I got pregnant with my first child and quickly called back to mom and dad's for help. And they had open arms ready for me. Very blessed that they took us both in, if you will, and just loved us, even though I made a little teeny mistake.
You know, and that's what parents do, right? I mean, we're both parents now. There's times when you could just strangle your children, but
Yeah.
after you calm down, you know, you realize it's you got to take care of your kids. But I got to back up when my previous co-host on here, Morgan, when people would say something like you were the middle child that gave your parents a lot of grief. You can't just let it go at that. You got to give us a few examples. Not we're trying to embarrass you or anything, but how did you test them?
Oh gosh, I mean, obviously the typical younger child testing of the parents, sneaking candy in the middle of the night kind of thing. But as I got into my teenage years, I'll tell you one story. It's funny now, but it wasn't then. I was 16 years old, and we lived in a ranch style home, so all one level. And I had learned how to bypass our alarm system, our home alarm.
Uh-oh.
So I unscrewed the one part from the window and taped it to the part on the base of it. So I could just go in and out my window, and I would go out all the time. And one fateful evening, I got caught. My friends were having a house party while their parents were out of town. The police showed up, busted the whole thing, and I get caught. An officer is saying, I'm going to call your parents. And I just start crying. I was like, take me to jail because my dad's going to kill me. Just take me to jail. So they called my dad, and I had a Tigger, Eeyore, and Pooh stuffed animals. So I would put them in, the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And my dad recalled that story about how when he walked in and ripped those sheets off and saw those animals, he just said he saw red. And I would say the worst part of that is my dad came and got me. Actually, there's two worst parts. My dad came and got me, brought me back home. And when I walked in the kitchen, my mom was sitting at the kitchen table just sobbing. Like you could just tell she had been sobbing. And she didn't say a word. It was the disappointment on her face that really made me think, like, I tell women this all the time. If you scream at a man or a child, they're not going to listen to you. But if they feel disappointment, you're probably going to get a response from them. And it's from that moment because it killed me to see her that disappointed. And That was the first worst part. And the second worst part was my dad drove me to that girl's house the next day so that I could tattle on her. And
Oh,
yeah, it was not fun.
oh, that's terrible.
I mean, I definitely deserved it, but it was just, when you're 16, especially a female, I mean, that was social like suicide, It was just the worst possible thing he could have done. But as a parent, I'm like, good dad. It was pretty ballsy to punish me that way.
Yeah. You telling that story, I got to tell you one quick story about my youngest daughter, Mandy. Love her to death. She's a mom now, and she's seeing what a lot of things that she's going through a lot of things that we had to put up with. But we were back in Atlanta for our second time. We lived in a really nice house. And in the basement, there was the previous owners had a dog. So they had a doggy door coming in from a fenced inside yard. So one day I was going up the steps and there were windows on our staircase. And I looked down and the gate was open in the backyard, and that gate is never open. So we start looking around, and I'm asking Connie, where's Mandy? Where's Mandy? We can't find her. Well, lo and behold, my wife sees her come running back across the street. Across the street was the neighborhood community center and pool and tennis courts and all that stuff. And she said, hey, she's coming back. So I ran downstairs and I stood about 15 feet inside of that doggy door. And when she tells the story, she's like, man, I was being real quiet. I closed the gate real quietly. I came in and slowly opened the doggy door. And as I'm crawling in, the first thing I see is a size 12 tennis shoes. And she slowly looks up, and there's Dad looking down at her.
Oh my gosh. That's like a movie.
Oh, it was, it was so funny. I was trying not to laugh, just seeing the expression on her face. And, you got to be stern because you're the dad, not, like, you get to your room right now, young lady. We'll talk about this when I calm down. And she takes off up the steps, and I just have to sit down, and I'm just laughing my butt off because the look on her face. But you're talking about how strict your dad was. I grew up as a PK, a preacher's kid, and my dad was a Southern Baptist minister. It was extremely strict. So I sympathize with you. I had the cops come and get me. I had the cops come and get me one time, and they took me home, and I think I'd rather gone to jail.
That's exactly what I said. It's so funny. It's because now, my kids are older. And when they were in their mid-teen years, I learned very quickly not to call my mom because she would just laugh and laugh about the payback my kids were giving me.
That's true. And I love reminding them now of now you know what we're going through or went through, what we went through.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. So now you've got an older sibling and a younger. Are they brothers or sisters?
2 girls. So there was 3 daughters. There is 3 daughters.
Wow. And did your dad lose all his hair?
No, he had a really great thick set of hair. Really great thick head of hair.
Yeah, I have 2 sons and 2 daughters, and the girls are the youngest, and that's the reason I've got all this no hair up here and the bald spot in the back. You girls, that's what you do to your dads.
I know.
So did either of them have issues with mom and dad, or were they good kids?
So my older sister is 16 years older than I am.
Okay.
And 12 years, 16 between the oldest. She's 12 years older than me and 16 years older than my youngest sister. And I didn't really have I remember because I was 5 when she moved out. So I remember sometimes like hearing them get on her. I don't have any juice,
Mm-hmm.
And then I really feel like my younger sister just watched me, and she was like a good kid.
Yeah.
It was really me.
Well, she learned.
She definitely learned. She's very smart.
Just out of curiosity, what did your mom and dad do?
My mom is a CPA. She had her own CPA firm here in the Franklin, Tennessee area. And she was also Mrs. Tennessee 3 different years.
Whoa, so how about that?
Yes, that was fun being a girl raised by a beauty queen. That's a whole nother childhood trauma issue. We could talk about it a different time. And then my dad was in marketing, so I definitely get he was a radio host and worked in marketing and did TV and radio commercials, which I helped a lot with. So he and I definitely had or share that creative bug, if you will.
Oh, very nice. You lived in Franklin, Tennessee, but before it became the Franklin, Tennessee it is now.
I know. If we only invested when I was 2.
Isn't that the truth?
I remember seeing the mall be built up in Cool Springs.
Yeah. It was, well, we were down in Murfreesboro, so we're just down the road, and my dad was actually the pastor at Franklin Road Baptist Church. This was back in the early 60s, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, long, long time ago. Man, it's giving up my age here, aren't I? I think everybody already knows I'm an old man. So when you were going through school, did you play sports, cheerleading, anything like that?
Yeah, my mom would not let me be a cheerleader because my grades weren't good enough. But looking back, I feel like she just maybe didn't want me in that because I got to play basketball. So I played basketball through elementary, middle, and high school. And I warmed the bench very well. So it's always nice and toasty for the stars of the team. And I also ran track. So I'm a sprinter.
Nice. Were you doing so you're doing the short races, not the long races?
Yes, I do not like long distance running. So I was doing the sprints, the relays, and I tried long jump and hurdling for a little while. I could not seem to figure out how to hurdle, and I really couldn't jump that far, so I didn't do that for very long.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what? At least you're out there trying. You're staying involved in sports. Does so much to keep kids out of trouble. It keeps them busy. Big advocate of sports.
Yes, exactly.
So in school, so now you got some issues at home with mom and dad. Did you have any issues in school?
Really? I was kind of a loser, to be honest. I didn't blossom until later on. And because my parents were so strict, I wasn't going out to the movies. I wasn't being dropped off at the mall. I was, the sneakiest thing I ever did was like with my schools, I would sneak out with one of my friends for lunch. But then she was I don't know if it's like a student assistant, but she was like one of his assistants. And so whenever he caught us, he was like, "Oh, hey guys." So I didn't really get in trouble.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like he was pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't even remember his name.
Well, Mr. Nice Guy, I guess, huh?
So, yeah, I wasn't, yeah, I didn't make good grades, but I also wasn't a poor student. I just kind of floated, I feel like. I just kind of scaled in the middle so as to not draw too much attention on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually ended up graduating early. I went to summer school after my junior year so that I could graduate early and be with all my friends were a grade ahead of me. And so I just didn't want to stay a whole nother year while they were moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And still, was so immature. But
well, most men, even at my age, are still pretty immature. But
it's true. It's true.
I'll probably get a lot of hate mail from all the guys on that. Hey, Murph, just keep your opinions to yourself there, brother. Okay, in school now, so you graduated early. What did you do between graduation and then you turned 18 and headed on down to Atlanta?
I did my first year at community college, and I worked at the TGI Fridays.
Yeehaw! I like that place.
I definitely got a lot of trouble at TGI Fridays, and that's when I started sneaking out to. And so my mom's CPA firm was very well known in Franklin. Her office was downtown. She worked with a lot of companies, and of course, being Mrs. Tennessee, she had a lot of recognition as far as who she was. And before I had left the house, there was a morning that I woke up and she said, "Hey, so and so called me and said they thought they saw you at TGA Fridays at midnight last night." And I said, "I was here. That was not me." But it was. I hate that. I know my parents. I can't get away with anything. Because the other thing I would do, which as a parent now, love my parents, I cannot believe they were this naive with as strict as they were. But we lived in a neighborhood on a cul-de-sac and we had 3 acres in the back of my house. And when it was spring, summer, fall, nice-ish weather, I fully convinced them that it was a lovely night and I just wanted to camp out in the tent in the backyard. And I stood all the time and I was just like, and then I would run to this other street so my friends could pick me up and we'd go party. It's so dumb.
Yeah. You know what? That must be a Tennessee thing because my first run in with the cops is while I was camping out with my buddies and we decided we'd break into a house.
Oh, okay. I've never done that.
Yeah. So, that thin blue line they talk about in law enforcement, you can go either way on that thin blue line. Believe me, I'm just, thank the good man upstairs. I fell to the right side of it, not the wrong side.
Well, I know. I totally understand. But I remember I was a bit older. I think I was at mid-20s. I started telling my mom little things. And one day she plugged her ears and she was like, I can't take anymore. I can't hear anymore. Just let me be naive.
Our oldest daughter sent Connie for Christmas, gave her a candle. And on the inscription on the outside of it says, Mom, you were right about so much shit.
You can't tell them that.
It's kind of a vindication that, hey, you know what? You did a great job, Mom. It's just they didn't appreciate us.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've gone down to Atlanta. You come back. You're going to get ready to have a child. Do you go back to work, or what's Mom and Dad have you doing now?
Oh yes, they did not. They took care of me in the sense that I got to live for free, which was awesome. Mm-hmm. But everything else I had to pay for because obviously they wanted to teach me responsibility. So I actually got my CNA license, so certified nurse assistant, and I worked there 3 days. So I did my 3 12-hour shifts, which was considered full time. And on the off days, I actually worked as a nanny for a local family here who had a son that was my son's age.
Very good. That's boy, that is teaching you some responsibility. As a CNA, where did you work at?
My first job was at Vanderbilt Stallworth, which is a rehabilitation hospital, and it was really hard. A lot of physical labor because I was on the neurology wing, and so it was a lot of brain injuries. They couldn't move, and my job was to change the beds, even if they couldn't get out, or change the bedpans, all the grunt work. So I worked there for a year, and then a church friend of ours worked at Centennial Medical Center in the OB, actually postpartum department. And I just said, I can't keep working at Stallworth. It's hurting my back. I'm too young for this. And she helped me get a job at the hospital in their high-risk OB department. So anybody that was having preterm labor, or maybe their water broke too soon, or they were high risk, or anything like that. Which it's so funny. I'm gonna give you a little teaser that we can follow up with on this back end. So the woman that I nannied for at this time ended up being the woman who gave me a job after a very hard life change. I'll say that so I don't give too much away. So we're going to make people listen to the whole thing. So there's a full circle story there. And then me working in high risk OB is also a full circle story, and totally a good story. It's just really cool that I had that experience.
Very nice. Now, this was before you had the baby and after?
This was before. No, this is after I had him. So before I had him, I actually worked as a waitress, and I opened up Buca di Beppo in Cool Springs, the Italian restaurant. And I worked there up until I delivered. And then, of course, I wasn't going to work night shift at a restaurant. My parents were like, you can do that, but you'll have to find someone to watch him. They were really working on getting me. They're like, you're a mom now. You're a grown up. You have to, if you're going to work night shift, then you have to find someone to help him because we still have lives too. And of course, at that time, I just thought, they're just so mean. But as a parent, I'm like, I'm so glad they instilled that responsibility in me, because I've had so much life happen since then that I literally could not have handled something else.
Oh, absolutely. I'm liking your parents already. One of the things I talk about frequently, whether it's on here or when we're doing our in-person presentations. In fact, we were just in Houston last week, and during the Q&A, and we being my old DEA partner Javier Pena and we always have a Q&A at the end after we tell the Escobar story. And one of the questions from a gentleman in the audience was, since fentanyl's a problem and you guys took out the Medellin cartel and all these other drug cartels, but cocaine is still prevalent, methamphetamine's making a comeback, and all of this, should we just give up hope? I thought, what a question. Absolutely not, So Javier will tell you.
But it's hard,
Yeah. Well,
because it keeps the evil keeps upping the ante, and that's making it really hard. I mean, I've got my baby sister's bringing her first child into the world, and she's like, I don't even know what to expect for my child to experience in his lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, Martin Luther King said it best, keep hope alive. You can never give up hope. But one of the things that I talked about there, and I'll talk about a lot, is the consequences of decisions made. When you make a decision, whether it's good or bad, there are consequences, right? And so the fact that your mom and dad had the foresight to say, girls, time to grow up. We're not always going to be here for you. My parents have been passed. They've been gone for a number of years. And there's been so many times, especially here later in life, when I wish I could just go back and talk to them for an hour and just sit there and apologize, for all the crazy things that I did. And I know I caused them to lose a lot of nights' sleep. I was in high school one night coming home, and we'd stayed out way too late. We actually got in a car wreck. We rolled a convertible and survived it. And as the police officers are driving us home, and this was probably 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, we passed my dad out looking for me. I wish our listeners could see your face right now. I think your chin just hit the table there.
It's awful.
Yeah, so it's
awful.
Yeah, but
I mean, listen, my youngest is 16, and he broke a rule this weekend that I just found out about yesterday. And I punished him the old-fashioned way. I made him do 100 write-offs, front and back, on the paper that said, rules are made for my safety and well-being. I made him write that 100 times.
Wow, you should have been a school teacher, because I had to write a lot of that crap on the blackboards.
I just thought, what can I do? Because, kids these days, you have to get creative with punishment. Plus, you've got their friends whose parents don't punish. So then you've got the double whammy of Jesse's parents never punished them. I'm like, great. I do the same thing my parents would say, like, well, good thing I'm not Jesse's parents.
Yeah.
But I just thought, okay, if we take his phone, which we still took the phone away, but we take his phone away, he goes and reads his books that he loves to read. Take the books away, he goes and starts writing his like he is very creative, and so he's going to write anyway. So I'm going to give him something to write, and it took him hours.
Oh Lordy, I mean, you better be.
I actually went in midway, and I said, "What is the what sentence are you writing?" And he just gave me this blank stare. Because he started cheating by writing the first word all the way down, the second word all the way down, instead of the full sentence. And I said, what's the sentence that you're writing? And he gives me the blank stare, and I said, you better tell me what it is, or I'm going to add 100 words to the end. And he said, rules are created for my safety and well-being. I was like, okay, just making sure you know.
You better be careful, because in today's society, that might be cruel and inhumane punishment to your child.
I mean, probably.
Oh, so. All right. Well, I think we've kind of exhausted that topic. Now, somewhere along the line here, you meet a young man that you fall in love with, and you guys get married, correct?
Yes. So when I worked at Hookah, I met a girl. We were just little girls, really, but there was a girl there that we really hit it off, became the greatest friends. And she got married, met this man and got married, and I got introduced to the brother. So he was deployed when we actually met, and we just became pen pals. It's totally a Dear John story. Well, I didn't break up with them, but they're just regulars. And we did that for 9 months of his 1-year deployment. And when he got back from his deployment, we were married 7 weeks later.
Wow. So that's when he got back from his deployment, it's the first time you guys met face to face, right?
Yes.
It's in a 7-week. Wow. That's
Oh, my,
quick.
my parents were like, crazy.
I'm
Actually,
not
my
going
dad said there's a no return policy.
to. Well, you know what? Our oldest daughter is dating a fella now, and they're not. I'm not sure how serious they're getting. They seem to be getting serious, but she won't say that they are. But I might have to use that.
No returns.
Oh my goodness.
No, I was 21. My son was 3. And I think that's what, looking back, kind of surprises me about, I, I want to say like them letting me go, but them letting me go because my son and I had lived with them that whole first 3 years of his life. We didn't move out. So I know that's why my dad said no return policy. But my mom, when I told her that I was pregnant, I had actually, because they had taught us that there are consequences to decisions and we need to figure out how to make our wrongs, our rights. So actually, when I told her that I was pregnant, I had already found a family to adopt my child
Oh,
because I was like, that way when I go there, I could say, it's okay though. And that's what I did. I said, it's okay though. I found a really great family. They've been trying to have children. Um, and they want to adopt him. And my mom, mid sob, just stops immediately. She said, is my grandbaby, and you're going to bring him home, and we're going to love him, and he'll never know the difference. And they did, my entire family did. And so my mom was very close with him. And I know it just broke her heart for us to go because when we got married, he was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado. So we were moving to Colorado. And my mom cried for days.
mm-hmm.
Not
But
about
that
me.
I understood. That's I don't know if my kids are listening to this tonight, but I got to tell you, we've got 5 granddaughters, and I think you love your grandchildren more than you love your biological children or your adopted children, because our 2 sons are biological and our daughters are adopted.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny because side story here. I've worn glasses for years since I got them when I first was stationed in Columbia back in the early '90s, and as the kids were growing up, I have this thing about I hate smudges on my glasses. It's bad enough that you have to wear them, but I hate fingerprints and smudges. And so when we were wrestling with the boys or the girls, when they're little, I take my glasses off, and everybody knew you don't mess with Dad's glasses. So our first set of granddaughters are twins, Emily and Madison, and so they were just toddlers crawling around. And when we were at Connie's mom's house, and these are the daughters of my youngest son Zach, and I'm sitting in the floor cross-legged, and they're crawling up on Pop's. Everybody calls me Pops. So they're crawling up on Pop's lap, and the first thing I always go for is the mustache. They feel that they've never seen anything like that. Then they go for the nose, and then they're going for the glasses. And all 4 of my kids are, don't touch Pop's glasses, and scared the poor little thing to death. And I looked at them and I said, you guys just shut up. She can touch anything she wants. And they're, after a couple of minutes goes by, they look at me and they're like, but you never let us. And I said, and you're still not allowed to. They are okay. Oh, absolutely. They just, all 5 of them are just, they're all different, but they're all very, very special. So, and sorry to get off on a tangent there. I love my grandkids. So you guys get married in Tennessee, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Head to Colorado. Now, what branch of the military is your husband in?
This is my former husband. He was in the Army.
Army, and what was his occupation there?
He was a medic.
Okay.
Yeah, so
And
he was a medic. And he was stationed in Fort Carson. And then about 6 months into us being there, his packet picked up for the 160th.
so explain to our listeners what all that means you just said.
In layman's term, he auditioned for a position and he got it. And it's in the special operations community.
And did you have to, hey, studs and studs. So did you have to move again?
We did.
Where to?
So,
Where'd you?
so while we were in Colorado, he had just gotten back from a year deployment. Almost immediately is getting orders for another year-long deployment. He has to go out to California for training for that. And we had just learned that we were pregnant with our first child together. I mean, we immediately got pregnant. And while we were there, I was in a car accident and I lost that child.
Oh,
and he was gone. And I'll never forget, that was truly my first experience of really what my new life was about. Because up until then, just like anybody, I'm thinking, I just met a man and fell in love, and he's in the military, and we have stability. This is great. And he was gone, and they would not let him come back. They told me that the FRG would have to take care of me. And I remember saying, what is the FRG? I don't know what that means. It stands for Family Readiness Group, and Family Resource Group. Readiness or resource? I don't remember. Um, but it's basically supposed to be for the spouses and the families for their support while the service members gone. And I just remember thinking, I don't know them. I've never met them. I don't know who they are. And I kind of want my family. So my mom ended up flying out to be with me. And then very luckily, very quickly after that, he got accepted into 160th.
wow. That's, there you go. Moms want to be there. How was your first son at this point?
He was just a little over 3.
So he probably didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah, he was just excited Nana was in town.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I'm so sorry for what you went through. That's horrible. Now, can you say where your husband was deployed to? Your ex-husband, sorry.
No, and that's only because I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that's, I can't imagine a tougher life. You know, our military folks get deployed, especially like you go out on a naval ship, you might be gone 8 months. And if you're married, that's just so hard. It's got to be so hard on a family.
Yeah.
Now, while your husband is deployed, what's your life like? What are your daily activities? Are you working, taking care of kids? Are you hanging out with other military wives? Are you on the wine circuit? Are you going on vacation to exotic places?
Yeah, those things. Well, the answers vary at different duty stations because right after Colorado, we went to Fort Bragg, and that's in North Carolina.
What was that little gesture I just saw there?
Worst duty station ever. It was not good. But he had to be there for 6 months to go through the school that he needed for the 160. And while we were there, I was still really I was grieving. We had moved again. We got our house off Craigslist back in the day. This is 2007. And we were there very short amount of time. I want to say it was a week. And then he went down to airborne school in Fort Bragg. So me and my son are once again home alone, in a strange place, don't know anybody. And because he was so young, it almost was easier in a weird way, like that 3-year-old range, because I could just take him to the park. I could put the TV on, things like that. I really got into repurposing furniture, so I would just get furniture off Craigslist and paint it and stuff. But I also got really into Chardonnay big time. And yeah, it wasn't good. I'll just be honest with you. My husband was gone, and I was drinking I would get the gallon jugs of Chardonnay, Livingston Chardonnay, because I couldn't afford anything fancy. And that would last me 2 days.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, I was spiraling. I just did it. I had no coping mechanisms. Truly, I didn't. And this is no one's fault. It's just growing up, if we were upset, we just shoved it down, and it's like, well, what do you want me to do about it? And then being thrown into this life with these boom, boom, boom things happening so quickly, that's just what I did. I would put friends on, I'd start painting furniture, and I would just drink. So it wasn't even like a depressed drinking kind of thing. It was just a distraction, if you will. And one night I went and tucked my son in, and I leaned over to kiss him, and I didn't stop leaning, right? I just kind of tumbled into the bed with him. He's giggling because he thinks mommy's being funny. And I fall asleep with him, pass out there with him because I could not physically get up. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget, I called my mom the next morning and I was like, I have a problem. This is not good. I'm drinking way too much. And she was so supportive and just like, honey, why don't you come back home for a few days? Like, just come back with us. And I remember being on the phone. I poured the rest of what I had. And I couldn't go see her because we were going to go down to airborne school to
Mm-hmm.
visit my husband while he was down there. And while I was down there is when we got pregnant with
Next
the
child.
next child.
Yeah.
And so then the drinking was, because it was like, hey, I haven't, in that moment, I almost felt like, okay, well, now I have something, I don't know if it's to look forward to. That's not really what I was feeling, but it was more like, okay, I'm back on track in some sort of
Mm-hmm.
way. But it was only 30 days after my miscarriage or my accident.
Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't know that story. Thank you for being transparent about it. I'm kind of sorry I ask it now because I was asking it as a joke, but you never know what you're going to find out on these interviews, right?
Yeah, well, I really am an open book because I know that I went through everything I've gone through has been to help somebody else, and I know what it's like to silently suffer in that place. And so, if there's someone that might be listening that's feeling like, oh shoot, this might be an issue, like there is hope on the other side of that. I'm not saying you get pregnant and then you start drinking like I did. Um, it definitely changed things.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will say on here, if you're pregnant, don't drink, don't smoke,
Yes.
don't do meth. Yeah,
I'll
that's
do
a
anything.
exactly, exactly. Now, and for our listeners, if you don't know, Fort Benning that's Georgia. So you're in North Carolina, and it's on the west side of Georgia, next to Alabama. So it's not like a jump in the car, let's drive over and have dinner with Dad.
It was like 7 hours, I want to say, and we
Yeah.
got a hotel room. We were just going to stay for the weekend, and we did. Yep. And then son and I went back, back to North Carolina. And yeah, a month, I guess, later, I found out I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so tired. So tired of them. But we ended up, our house, when it was just me and my son, our house was getting broken into at 11 a.m. by this guy with a knife. And I flipped the alarm, sirens went off. He ran away, and I did load up the car for 10 hours.
What, are you living on the military base?
Oh, we were off post outside the Riley Gate, which I know I shouldn't have done that, but I didn't know because we got on Craigslist. Yeah.
Did the so when the alarms went off, did the burglar run?
Yep.
They ever catch him?
Mm-mm.
Holy cow!
No.
That's something to ruin your day. Did he come back while you were gone?
Probably not. Mm-mm. We ended up getting a boxer puppy, and we named him Cujo. And I would walk around the neighborhood going, Cujo, get stop, Cujo. And I was like looking around, like, my dog will eat you.
I love it. That's like working undercover.
Yeah, right.
So your husband comes back from airborne school, and now he's in the stud group, the Night Stalkers, and they don't sit around at base and wait for the phone to ring, do they?
Well, he wasn't quite there yet because he came to airborne school and then he had to go through the medic course here for it was a
Mm-hmm.
6-month training, if you will, course. And I was pregnant with Zachary, so we both had a Zach. And I woke up one morning, it's like 6:30 in the morning, it was Sunday. I get to the bathroom, I get to the door, and I turn around, and he's looking at me like, what's going on? And I said, either my water just broke or I just peed on myself. And out, my water had broken and I was only 23 weeks along.
Oh.
So this is the full story high risk OB moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because my water breaks way earlier than it should. And I didn't freak out because I knew that wasn't like the movies show. It's like, it's not like that. It's not really like that. I mean, like sometimes it is, I guess. I knew that just needed to like go to the doctor, go to the hospital. And as most military people know, you've got an post hospital, and then you typically have an off post hospital nearby. But you're supposed to go on post for emergencies. And then if you need the other hospital, they can transfer you. So we go to the military hospital. And again, it's early in the morning on a Sunday. And I sat in that triage for 12 hours waiting.
Oh.
So then I start to get nervous and I start to stress out. And because of my experience, I'm not shouting orders, but I'm like, hey, I need steroids and I need magnesium and I'm starting labor. I can feel it. What are we doing? And, doctor, we know it's a Sunday. We're trying to get someone in, on-call doctor in, or whatever. And I'm just laying there thinking this isn't good because it's just taking so long. And finally, the doctor gets there. It's in the evening by this time. And he's like, well, let me do an ultrasound to see how big a baby is. And because of my experience, I knew he had to be 500 grams or more to be viable. And so they do the ultrasound, and on ultrasound, he weighs 593 grams.
Wow.
Grams.
Yeah.
You dealt with a lot of drugs. Grams.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, that's not much.
And it's not much. And so he's like, okay. So he measures viable. Unfortunately, we can't help a child this young at this hospital. I said, well, you better get me to one that can. And he said, well, but then we risk you having a child in the ambulance and he would die. And I said, well, you're telling me he's going to die here. So you either transfer me or I'm walking out AMA and which I should have done hours before that. So anyways, they transfer me to the outside hospital. And as they were doing and they finally gave me the steroids, the magnesium. And as they're putting my inpatient paperwork in the computer, it was too late. And they rushed in and took me back, and he weighed 547 grams.
So we're talking about 1.2 pounds.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, so okay, now you're getting ready to live in the NICU for a while, aren't you?
Yes, but that was our first experience with the soft community, because as soon as it happened, they were like, whatever your family needs, you need to be with your family. Like my husband, they just recycled him so that he could be with us. And I was like, this is so much different. It was just so much different.
And tell our listeners what the soft community is.
A special operations.
Yeah.
And so we ended up being at for a year instead of 6 months because of our son. They kept recycling him. So he was born with a grade 4 brain bleed on the left and a grade 1 on the right. And already with a low birth weight, his likelihood of survival was 0.005% in those first few days.
Oh.
And about week 2, doctors started telling us he'll have no quality of life. It's probably best that you let him go.
Oh.
Would do with all the damage and all these things. And of course, we're like, no, we're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, 4 times they told us that over the period of the first several weeks of his stay, because he didn't enjoy it. Lungs in the NICU twice. But this was the first time. And the very last time, the doctor said, he's never going to walk. He's never going to talk. He'll never speak. He'll never run. You're going to have to take care of him forever. He'll be in a wheelchair. Like, they're basically saying all these things to show. And it's like one of those 50-50. Like, half I can see them really trying to prepare me, and the other half I'm like, are you trying to scare me at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
And then he said to me, he'll never say I love you.
What a terrible thing to tell somebody.
And I was by myself. My husband had gone into work that day, and I called him just fuming and just so upset. He came and they got words. And we're like, don't ever ask us that again. I'll sue you.
Mm.
So fast forward, since then, our youngest has had 15 brain surgeries, shock revisions, because his brain fluid wouldn't drain properly. 2 rounds of meningitis, and 5 surgeries because the shunts messed up the pressure in his eyes, all sorts of stuff. But he's 16 now, and he walks, talks, feeds himself, space, and says, "I love you, Mom," on the regular.
Oh,
All his
yeah.
life. He's
Yeah.
a walking testimony.
Oh my gosh. I got chill bumps and I might be tearing up here just a little bit. Holy cow. You know what you could have done is you could have introduced him to your mom and she'd have told him, that's my grandbaby you're talking about.
She did. She came and spent a lot of time with us at the NICU. A lot.
You and I have talked before, and our listeners have heard this on the intro, which you have not heard. You won't hear it until you listen to this episode. But I told them about the first time you and I interviewed, and I think it was mostly my mistakes. Could have been a Wi-Fi issue, but it was so bad that this is our second interview, and I didn't know that. Oh man, you talk about a blessing! Holy cow, that's fantastic, fantastic. Well, I hope I get to meet him someday.
He's awesome.
What's his name?
His name is Zachary.
Oh, Zachary. That's my youngest son is Zachary. Call him Zach. Yep. Okay. So now, oh wow, it's kind of hard to move on past that. That is just what a story.
It gets better.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Tell us.
No, I just get so after he was stable and my husband had finished his school, we got stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which I was very happy about because it was near Nashville and I could finally be close to my family again. And we would spend the next 8 years there together. And the year after, we were home, because Zachary continued to have surgeries even after we moved. We were Vanderbilt Children's a lot in the PICU there. We finally get him stable. And my husband goes on deployment. And now he's on 90-day deployments. And I get a call late at night from another spouse that his helicopter had been eliminated. And I still don't really know what happened. I don't think they really knew what happened, and I might be speaking out of turn. It fell from 45 feet or something like that. I think it got hooked in a wire. Like there was wires that had hooked in or whatever. It was on a Chinook and it rolled several times after. And it knocked out everybody that was on the aircraft. And my husband was the medic. And so he suffered a TBI from that. And that's definitely started a whole other traumatic, time in my life.
And what's TBI?
Traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
So I know I'm really bad at it.
That's okay. Cops are terrible at acronyms, and it turns out everybody else is too.
It's true. And living in Tennessee, they're like, it's not the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
That's true.
Traumatic brain injury.
Got it. So now, he comes home, and what does he have to go into the hospital? What's the next steps for him?
Yeah, he took him 10 days to get home, and we went through several different specialists and ended up in a rehabilitation TBI, traumatic brain injury rehabilitation center in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
And so the boys and I stayed in a Homewood Suites. I got to plug Homewood because they were such incredible hosts, especially what we were going through at that time. Just to have that space with 2 young boys, and sweet Zachary had a patch on his eye because we were trying to fix the muscles in his eyes, and we stayed there for almost 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so your husband comes out. Does he come back home at this point?
Yep, go back home.
And are you starting to see any differences in his personality, the way he behaves, anything like that?
I did not start seeing for a couple of years. I think a lot of that was because the both of us were like having different types of PTS, post-traumatic stress. And I think we just both were kind of on a robot, or what is it? Autopilot. And it was, I remember if it was a year, maybe a year and a half, when things, we thought we were getting stable, things were normalizing, that he had come to me wanting help because he had become addicted to the opioids that he was given during that time. And of course, I just go right into, we're gonna get this together. It's gonna be great, the first step is admitting you have a problem, and this is how we're gonna get through it.
You're very analytical.
Yes.
That's good.
I had just gone through that with Zachary. So when he was in the NICU, I was all blinders on. What do we need to do? Who do we need to talk to? Da, 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 da. And then when he got home is when I fell apart. And I don't know if it's like a late reactor. Yeah, so I went straight into, actually, if I'm being honest, looking back, it's more of a control. Like a lot of spouses, when we can't control what's going on externally and something approaches us that we can internally, or at least we think we can control, we go right into trying to control it. And so I think I more was doing.
So from the time that, your husband came home from the hospital until a couple years later when you started to see a little bit of change, was he still being deployed?
Yes.
And then we're talking overseas. So we're talking combat situations. And so then when he would come home, was he at home or was he still on the battlefield? Or
he was at home, but he was out, he was a big fisherman, hunter, so he would disconnect them that way. And I just remember finding a lot of it. Like, you're finally home and you're not home.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard that with service members or their family? Just like, you're home and you're not even home.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of things like isolating himself in that way just because he wanted to have a calm environment.
Hey, players, this is the end of part 1. As you know, part 2 comes out tomorrow on a Tuesday. In the meantime, on social media, go and check us out on X at Game of Crimes and on Facebook and Instagram at Game of Crimes Podcast. Also on Facebook, type in Game of Crimes fan page and join us for some more fun. Our website is gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot more information there, including all our episodes, the book list, which contains the books written by our guests, Game of Crimes merchandise, and a lot more. In the meantime, everybody stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow for part 2.